Hello, my name's Naji Abdallahi. I'm an instructor at BMC Education Services, and like a lot of you, I'm working from home. In fact, this week I'm teaching from home. This is the setup that I've got here. I've got my laptop, I've got a larger monitor where I can see the WebEx session on the right. I've got the lab guide that I'm teaching from on the left, my documentation. The audience can hear me, so the students can hear me. I can hear them. They can see my screen. I can share their screen. I can help them out with the labs. In any case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little demonstration. I'm going to have some of my colleagues from BMC Education sit in for students to simulate an online training session, just so that you can get an idea what it's like, how it would feel to be doing an online course instead of traveling, going to the classroom, and sitting in the classroom with an instructor physically present. We're going to be doing this stuff online through WebEx and through a remote lab environment. Okay, so at the moment I'm on a break, and you can see the students are sitting there also on a break. I can see my colleagues in there that I'm teaching today. Of course, normally on a training course we have people from BMC, we have people that are partners, from partner organisations to BMC, and most importantly we have BMC customers who are wanting training on BMC products. The course I'm teaching today is actually a CMDB course, and it looks like I've got a few messages in chat, so we all have chat to use during these sessions. I can see that Andrea has completed her lab. I can see that Felicia has also completed her lab and is asking me about how many and what type of questions we have. Mahesh is asking me about some documentation, and it looks like Shweta is asking me about a CDM poster. Now, I've put in some answers here, so I can send messages back either individually or to the group and communicate with the students on the course. Okay, break time is pretty much at an end, so I'm going to take away my little break symbol there. Okay, I'm going to show the slides, and I'm going to ask the students, can they hear me? Are they ready to continue after the break? And then you're going to hear me and see me teach these students a few slides, a bit of a lab, just to see what it's like on an online course. Hi everyone, hi Andrea, Felicia, Mahesh, Shweta, we're back from break. Could you just let me know if you can hear me clearly? Yeah. Thank you very much. So we just are about to start lesson 5 of module 5. Any questions on any of the lessons and modules we've done just before the break? Anyone got a question? Hey Mahesh, yeah, you got a question, go ahead.
Yes, could you please share the details on the discovery mapping documentation, please?
Oh yeah, that's right. You asked me about how to get the discovery mapping documentation. Let me put that in for everyone, okay, so everyone can get that URL. I'm just posting it now into chat. Okay, and I'm also going to share my screen, so you should be able to see my desktop in just a moment, and I'm going to show you that document. So this is the document. You've got the URL for it, hopefully, and we can see here the mappings, which tell us that we expect Discovery to create computer system, and that these are the fields which it should fill in, exactly where the field data comes from within Discovery as it goes over to CMDB. And very usefully here, it tells us the token ID rules of how it figures those out, which we often have questions around. We talk about that a lot more when we talk about reconciliation. It's also telling us it will create the operating system using that class, and it also tells us very usefully exactly which relationships we can expect it to create. Okay, so is that the document you needed? All good, Mahesh? Perfect.
Yes, thank you.
Good. All right, so I'm going to go through the slides now. Please feel free to stop and ask questions anytime in chat or by raising your hand or opening up your microphone to ask me those questions. So just to recap, we're going to start with lesson 5 of module 5. So we're looking here at the class manager. Okay, so class manager in this user interface can be found here. So on the class manager menu across the top, we can click in there to look at the classes. What we can see on this screen are the classes. So at the moment we're looking at the base element class, but we can click expand here, show all the subclasses. We can click on any of those subclasses and we can see the attributes, the permissions, the indexes that exist on there, and also usefully more information that describes the class. So what is this class for? What attributes would we expect to put in there? How would we be expected to use it? Okay. You're going to be doing this in a lab. You're going to be looking at this class manager in this user interface that we now have for CMDB. Okay, moving on to the next slide. What I'm looking at in here is creating a class where we're able to click create class. We can see exactly which class we are in. We can create a subclass here, and here we can see the properties of the class. Oh, Felicia, yeah, you've got a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, Naji, thanks. Is this where you go to add the new attributes to the base element class?
Yep, absolutely. There's a little option to do that in here. I'll just highlight that. It's not highlighted on the slide anyway, but here it is. Yep. And that's where we can go and add an attribute. So actually here we're in the computer system class, so it would add it there. On the base element class, that would add it to that class. So get onto the right class, click add, and that would actually add an attribute right there to it. Actually, I'll give a little demonstration, okay, to show you exactly how that's going to happen. So within here, we're going to class management class. We pick the class that we want to work with, whichever one it is. And then we can go ahead and we can add attributes to it. So base element, yep, this is where we would add an attribute to the base element. We choose what kind of attribute it's going to be. Maybe it's a decimal, maybe it's an integer, date or time. We specify some other options for the attribute and we go ahead and create it. So that's creating it from here, classes in there. That's on that class. If we want to go to one of the subclasses, we click that and then go ahead and add an attribute to it. Yeah, so we're going to be trying that out a little bit later in the training. Okay, actually a question for the group for you to think about maybe, and maybe give some opinions on, which is, in what kind of circumstances would we want to add attributes to the base element class? Any ideas? Okay, yeah, I can see Shweta there telling us that to make a new custom attribute available to all the subclasses. True, if we add it to base element, all the subclasses would get it. Andrea, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Naji. So what if the attribute is only relevant to switches, not to all types of hardware in the CMDB?
Yeah, okay, so there we were saying let's create it in the base element or perhaps in another class. So what Andrea is saying is, how come we want to add an attribute which is only relevant to one type of CI? In that case, we've got a few choices about what we can do there. We could add it to the computer system class because switches are actually a component or a type of computer system. Okay, so there is actually a there's an attribute which we can use to do that. So if we want to add it to a specific class, we can. If we add it to base element, that would affect all the classes. Any other ideas?
Naji, I don't believe there's actually like a specific class for switches, right? So computer system would probably be the best bet to include your switches, servers, and laptops, right?
That's it. So the correct way of modeling things like switches, servers, laptops is actually within the computer system class. That's best practice to actually do that. And there are attributes such as primary capability, category type item fields, which are specifically there to tell us that it's that type of computer system. Yeah, good point. Okay. All good? Okay, so what we're looking at, oh, Mahesh, yeah, you go ahead.
Yes, would you also please show us how to create a new class per se?
Okay, so what you're asking is not making an attribute in an existing class, but actually creating a whole new class. So if we just go back one slide here, Yep, we've got a couple of options to actually do that in here. So we've got add subclass, which assumes that we're on a class already. Okay, to actually do that. We're actually going to be doing that in a later lab. Okay, so we're going to be showing you how to create a new class, completely new class, if you do decide that the out-of-the-box classes don't match your requirements. So we'll be seeing that later, how to add a completely new class. Yeah, Andrea, go ahead.
Yes, Naji. So is creating custom classes really a good idea, though? I'm asking that because in our organization, the project manager tends to advise against it.
Okay, well, certainly before we create a new class, we need to do what we're doing in this module, which is to fully investigate the existing classes. Make sure we know what's actually there, because what we're effectively doing by adding new classes is adding new tables which didn't used to exist before, and we're adding new fields that we can possibly add, which may well already be catered for in the common data model, in the out-of-the-box data model. So there can be situations when we need to add new classes if we absolutely cannot fit the data into the best practice common data model. But best practice is, let's stick with that data model. It's industry standard. There's an industry standard called DMTF which covers this, and we should try and stick to it as closely as possible. The providers and the consumers of CMDB all assume that we will have this standard model. Okay, so what we can see in here is the properties of any given class. We can study them, we can understand what's actually there, and that's really following up the question I just answered about, is it a good idea? Well, certainly not a good idea to start creating new classes and attributes before you know what's already there. Okay, good. Time for you to do your lab now. So you've all got a lab environment that you've been connecting to. What we're doing now is going to be lab 5.4. So lab 5.4, what we're going to be doing there is viewing information about the computer system class, which we agreed was a class in which we could put things like servers, laptops, switches, by specifying the type of item that they are. Okay. We're also going to verify and understand that computer system is a subclass of BMC system, and that computer system is a regular class. We're then going to have a look at the attributes to make sure that we understand what attributes exist before we start going on to our lab 5.5 later today, where we're going to be creating new attributes. And finally, we're going to look at the information tab to verify what the right relationship would be between computer system and an IP endpoint, which actually turns out to be BMC hosted access point relationship. So we're going to use Class Manager to help us understand how we should be modeling the data. Okay, over to you, lab 5.4. Okay, while they're doing this lab, by the way, I can actually see what people are doing. So I can take a look and observe what the students are doing in their lab environment. I've got a method to see that. Okay. And I'm following the progress of my students here. So when you come on a course, the instructor is going to be able to see what you're doing. I can actually zoom in, yep, and take for a look here at Shweta doing her lab, moving through the lab. Okay, so you need help locating BMC computer system. Okay, what I'm going to do, Shweta, I'm just going to take control of your lab environment. So I'm just going to take control here. So what we're looking at in the list of classes here is we're looking at the base element at the moment. What we can do is we can expand that, and we can keep expanding that, or we can search for computer system. So we can go ahead there, search for all classes that have that character string in, and we can go ahead and locate computer system class. So we're now focused on that computer system class. that make sense? All good? Okay, great. Students are now working through the lab, and while they're doing that I can help them answer questions, and that should give you an idea of what we do on our online training through WebEx. Mixture of lecture, Q&A, as much interaction and involvement from the students as possible, answering as many of those questions as we can possibly get to, and giving students plenty of opportunity to try out stuff in a lab environment with live instructor support. So looking forward to seeing you on an online course. Bye.